All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today, pretty much back by popular demand, we have Dr. Fred Clary. If you watched his first podcast, you probably are still digesting it. Uh, Dr. Clary and I always have a good time talking. We're old friends. We go way back. I love our story of getting to know each other because we're a set of opposites that are really deep inside kind of the same person, which is a really cool discovery when you meet somebody that feels like a brother after you first look at them and they feel like a stranger. But Dr. Clary's been through incredible things. He does incredible things in his practice. He's a chiropractor that does not limit himself to back pain and crinks of the back. He works on stroke, gunshot wounds, cerebral palsy. I mean, he likes the difficult stuff, which is not surprising to me because he always took the path that was the uphill with the branches and the snow and the vultures coming down pecking at him. It's just his nature. He loves some adrenaline, and he gets it by doing dramatic and amazing things. He's a power lifter his whole life, and he's invented his own chiropractic technique. If you saw the other one, as well as teaches neurology classes, neurology diplomat. His knowledge is all over the board, and we love having him here because we like to test if we can stump him, see if we can ask him some great questions. And today I picked the topic of stress because stress is absolutely an interesting term, because I always thought stress was always bad. And obviously when I went to chiropractic college and learned about stimulus response and the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, the autonomic system, which we'll get into a little bit, I figured out that if I didn't get some stress, I really didn't get the best out of me. I needed a little bit of stress to motivate me. I'm by nature kind of a little bit more relaxed, and to really perform at a high level, I needed somebody or something to drive me. And when I created stressors, I performed at a higher level. So welcome to the show, Dr. Fred. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. It's great to be back. Hello to all your listeners and watchers. I just got back from the Keys, Key Largo, and we spent some time in Marathon and Key West with my wife, Belinda, and it was a fantastic time. There were not bodies in the streets, with the pandemic, and it was so great to watch the local news where they didn't talk about the pandemic, 24/7, talk about crime here in Miami, and this big fish was caught, and there's traffic jam on Highway 1. That was
Fantastic.
amazing.
That's got to be a relief. The power of focus, which we'll get into today a little bit when talking about stress. That's great to hear. Here in New York, it's still 24/7 panic and fear and running around, constant Fauci announcements and that kind of thing. So I'm looking forward to the day when that settles down and people get a better understanding of their immune system, better understanding of viruses, and basically a better understanding of mass media and and everything that's entailed in that. So I think that's coming because, the truth has a way of rearing its beautiful head, in my opinion. And I think we're headed more towards there as we go, because
I think I agree, Doc. This is, as I said in the last podcast, this is not a pandemic of coronavirus. It has a little change on a glycoprotein spike. I think this is a pandemic of ignorance. Ignorance meaning lack of knowledge of how your body works, how your immune system works, how your nervous system works, and more importantly, it's a pandemic of people giving up their rights, giving up their freedom. I mean, can you imagine if I told you that 13 months ago that people will give up their rights of going to church or having funerals? I mean, funerals of your loved ones, gathering together to cry and mourn the loss of grandma. They would give that up because of a slightly mutated cold virus.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, the more we talk about it, I was talking to a practice member, a patient yesterday, and he's in statistics like I am. And he's like, has the needle moved? Oh, you mean the vital statistics, like how many people have died? Like in Minnesota, we average at least before 2018, 110, 100 people die every day of all the kinds of causes, because we're a state of 5.6 million.
Mm-hmm.
So how many people have moved? Has that needle moved at all? And when you do the numbers for 2019 and 2020, it hasn't moved.
I know. I don't know what to say about something like that, because I hear other stats, but most of the time when you go to the CDC and you look at it, if the all-cause death rate isn't extremely high, in what is going on exactly?
Yeah.
You know, I really like to understand what the fear is about. Obviously, people have died from this virus.
Yes.
People die from flus. People die from flus. And this is singling out it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to be singling out certainly the sick and the comorbid, but also occasionally someone that really doesn't fit in that category. And I think there's a caveat that I'd like to know more about. Maybe you do, but why would certain people get hit so hard that don't fit in to the classic category that would normally be given a hard time by a flu?
Well,
do you have any ideas on that yet?
It all comes up to the biology of this bug, and we know all about it. We have at least 13, 14 years of research from the SARS. This thing is on a SARS-1 backbone. For everyone listening, if you remember 2003, we all freaked out about SARS. It's going to end the world. And then it disappeared. It disappeared because we didn't hide the healthy, and we allowed the bug to infect the healthy and strong. And the bully, the bug, the virus got beat up and disappeared. Mm-hmm. This time we kind of like quarantined the strong, which makes no sense. So we quarantined the strong so this virus can mutate up and get stronger, as opposed to mutate down, either disappear and get weaker. We have plenty of examples with swine flu, H1N1. I mean, the most prevalent form of the flu in Minnesota is H1N1. But a few years ago, it was deadly. Not just deadly to old, sick people, but deadly to everyone, to me, to you. It was taking out all demographics. But we had allowed it to go through all the strong, and they took it out. They mutated the virus because they beat it up. They beat up the virus with their own immune system, and the virus they sloughed off, the virus they gave off, was changed. It was weaker. So thank God for my kids, because they probably got it, and they gave me the weaker form of it. So I was able to, get an inoculation for my kids, because we, share the same chicken wings. And all of a sudden, I have some immunity, and that's what's called herd immunity, where you build that up. We did something totally different this time, and we isolated the strong and allowed the bug to get stronger. Makes no sense. Doesn't follow anything we've ever done. I'm still at a loss. At least the social cultural reasons we did it. There's a lot of conspiracy theories out there, but it's amazing how we let this thing take off, and we know it doesn't kill, like my teenagers who still can't go to school. There are no teenage deaths. I mean, there's teenagers with cancer and immunocompromised who get COVID who don't die here in Minnesota.
Yeah.
So the amazing thing is those with strong immune systems and still have a thymus gland underneath their sternum that produce your T cells. Us adults, we're weird humans. We don't have all the organs that children do. So we don't have a thymus gland that works. We have to go on what we had up to age 12, which our kids have. They produced antibodies and potentiated T cells to this and kicked its butt. But what we did is we hit everybody and allowed this thing to ramp up. And then there's that fear, that stress. We're going to talk about stress today. That stress that's on top of it. We have enough research from the 1920s showing 1920s. That's before we had TV and Al Gore invented the internet. We can go all the way back to Hans Sallier and his little hospital in Montreal in Canada, where he was observing that those patients with a lot of stress, like a lot of things going on, mom died, weak, had bad nutrition. He called it stress. And what he noticed is these people did not do well in the hospital, or as well as other patients who had a lot of family around them and ate better, higher social, cultural, financial strata. So what Hans Sayed did when he was talking about the word stress is say, look, this is affecting the body. We now have we have a huge swath of research showing that abnormal stress, fear and anxiety, fear and anxiety, fear and anxiety reduce how your T cells work. In fact, they turn off your cytotoxic cells. So what's that mean is you can't even fight cancer if you're stressed out. You can't fight viruses. There's a cool little chemical that our T cells produce, our immune cells produce when fighting viruses. It's called interferon. Okay. Yep. Interferon, you have to go to Mexico a few years ago. If you had cancer and you didn't want to do chemo, you went down there to get interferon. Right. Well, guess what? You don't have to pay for it. Your body actually produces it, or T cells, unless you're stressed out with fear and anxiety. And if you have fear and anxiety, guess what? All the research, all the medical research out there says it turns it off.
Right. One of the things.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, real quickly. One of the things that in researching for this was that humans have an unusually large neocortex, right? You know this with your neurology training. And because it's so large, our thoughts, just simply thinking a thought, is more powerful at either enabling us or disabling us. And unlike animals. So if we have a stressful thought, we are put into a much more stressful situation than an animal would be, because it more dominates the whole neocortex. The neocortex dominates the hypothalamus, and it goes right down the line to creating a chemistry where what is turned on is the fight, flight, and the survival. And that is not supposed to be a long-term thing. We're going on a year of massive fear, and it's so destructive to our way of making the proper chemistry, like you're talking about, like interferon.
I guess I was blessed. I have trouble with that fear thing, because for fear, having fear means it's a call to action. Why am I upset? What can I work on? What can I do more? I have a different view of fear, and I'm not asking everyone to, all of a sudden become a superhero, but you want to make sure that your fear is justified, because a lot of people have phobias. So they're afraid of snakes or spiders, ants, so all of a sudden they're upset. They see a bug and they're mice. They're running on top of the stairs. Get the mice. You're 20 times its size. Just step on it, but that's right. Okay. Because some people have this weird, abnormal, disproportional reaction to external stimuli. And we call those phobias. And that's okay to have those once in a while. But at that moment where you're afraid of that mouse or that spider, your immune system's turned off. You're sympathetic. And we have a fancy name for that. But our unconscious nervous system has two parts: autonomic, digestion, get muscles, good, happy things, connections with your family and loved ones. And then sympathetic, fight or flight, run away from the spider, run away from the saber-toothed tiger, and that releases so many chemicals. It gets us ready to run or throw a rock, or throw a spear. And whether we're in 2021 or we're 10,000 years ago, that chemistry bathes the brain, does the same thing. Just because, we have the internet and we have, TikTok and Facebook, doesn't mean that our biology has changed. And no matter what Fauci says, you can't change reality and what the mass media do to you. And our biology will shut down our immune system. So if you think about it this way, why would you put an irrational fear into a public, and that changes how your body reacts? If you're going to say, hey, there's a crazy virus out there and it could kill you, everyone's scared. And guess what? You actually increase because you shut down immune systems, the amount of fighting you can do against that virus, and you will kill people. Now, this isn't the voodoo effect. This isn't new age or anything like that. It's just neurology. It's how it works. This is biology. So just by giving into that anxiety and fear, you shut down your nervous system. If you say, okay, maybe it's out there. What can I do? If you take a more autonomic, a area for growth and progression, yeah, I guess I should start taking zinc and vitamin D every day, and maybe get a little more sun, and I'm going to open the windows and go for walks, and maybe I will be a little more careful. I'll get that protein. Oh my goodness, I weigh 200 pounds as an adult, and I'm only taking in 70 grams of protein. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
which means you're feeding off yourself. Maybe I'll mix in that chicken breast in a salad. And just by doing that, you build up your immune system. What blows my mind is you have people right now wearing 2 masks and gloves when they're in their car by themselves, driving down the road. They're so scared, but they won't change their diet. They won't change their behavior, so they
Yep.
are stronger. My
Yeah.
question, I asked a patient this the other day. If you're really worried about this thing, then make yourself freaking bulletproof. You can change your body. There are people out there that are asymptomatic carriers. Great. Become one. Why don't you get
Exactly.
yourself stronger? Why don't you
No,
eat better? I
I,
mean,
I I see it in my practice as well, and I have the same sort of frustration you do. I actually asked a woman who is very out of shape, just not a physical person, very bright woman. She's a PhD, and we've had some great conversations. But I said, would you rather eat a stalk of celery and go for a mile walk? And if I told you that was going to enhance your immune system, and it was true, and you believed it, okay, no placebo here, but
yeah.
or not do that and get the new vaccine, what should you rather do? And she didn't even hesitate to say she'd rather get the vaccine. She had more faith in
Wow.
the speed that has been put into this vaccine than she does in her own body, because she's lived a life of sort of medical dependence. She doesn't believe that she either has the genome or the ability, So I, of course, told her about epigenetics, which everyone should look up after this podcast, because that just shows you how the environment can change and alter the expression of your genes. People think that, as Dr. Fred knows, people think that your genes are this solid state and you're being given them as a blessing or a curse from your parents. And there's not a lot you can do but wait it out till you get cancer, diabetes, heart disease, or whatever your parents had. But there's loads of science that tells us that the environment, the emotional state, and the chemical state that you created in your life, that you allowed, however you want to look at it, affects which genes do what. The telomeres, the tails on them, all the stuff that a gene can do to either express what is held in there or hold on to it forever. This genome is something to study, but we got to go beyond that and study behavior. They did a study one time where they took stem cells in 3 different petri dishes and used different environments, in a sense, chemically in those petri dishes. Now, these stem cells were clones, so they're 100% identical. Each one was given a slightly different environment, from a really good environment to a mediocre to a poor one. And the genetic expression of these cells was dramatically different. So how could that be? How could that be that the exact clone cells with environments, slightly different environments, have a dramatic different thing? Just shows you that there is plasticity. There's plasticity to our minds and our thoughts, our ability to grow. And there's plasticity in the genome from the chemical mediators that our thoughts create. Now, one thing I wanted to tell you before I forget, and we'll get on with it a little bit differently, is that I had a friend of mine do 23andMe, that gene test, right? Now, I don't know everything about it. I've never done it. I plan on doing it just to expand my knowledge so I can speak intelligently about it. He came in, he has a lot of autoimmune disease, a lot of problems. We got him on fermented food. He's doing a lot better. But one of the things he said is that he discovered, after looking outside of what they gave him, he did further research on what his data was that he had something called a warrior gene. And I thought, interesting. Now, this is a very mild guy, very intelligent, very book smart. He does not represent, in my mind, anybody that would be a warrior. He wears earmuffs. Give an idea in the cold, That's usually warriors aren't in earmuffs, they're usually like hatless, or they have some big fur hat on, the kind of something like you would wear, Viking hat. But I said, so how do you define that? How are you a warrior? I didn't doubt it, but I just thought, well, it's interesting, him of all people saying this. He said, warriors cannot sustain fear for very long. They
Nope.
go to action. And what you said earlier about, to me, I go to action, and action might be something physical.
Mhm.
If there's something in the yard making noise, at first I'm startled, the heart beats, I'm a little bit scared. Then I'm like, all right, I have 3 daughters and my wife in this house. I'm going to go outside and see what's going on, right? I'm
Mhm.
probably going to have a bat. I'm going to
Mhm.
figure this thing out, right? So at first it's fear, then it's action. And he said, well, if that's the way you live, you have the warrior gene too. And I'm like, hey, great. That's like a cool thing to have. But it got into how long you can sustain fear. When this virus first hit Italy and they reported the 10% case death rate, I was in fear. I thought, wow, this thing's going to sweep. The Chinese have different physiology. The Italians probably have similar physiology to Americans since the immigration is so great, and that's what I'm made out of mainly. So I thought, this is scary. Okay, and then I found out the testing was the issue. They only tested the elderly and the sick in Italy. Germany came out a little bit after that with a 0.6% death rate, or 0.06, because they tested everybody, because Germans are efficient usually,
Yeah.
right? Italians were like, hey, we do what we want. We got to do it, So, and then everybody started to take a breath a little bit. And I went from fear to action. What did I do? I started studying viruses. It's been a little while since I've done much with them. I started talking to you, started following you, your neurology Facebook page, and the posts that you had. And the articles you sent, I saved them and read the entire thing. And I thought, okay, I get what's happening here. We have a spike protein. We have a variation. It's not great. The weak are going to get it a little, and I wonder how we'll proceed. Meanwhile, the fear state came over the country, and the 2 masks, and the don't leave your house, and the don't touch anybody, and don't talk to anybody. Meanwhile, what am I reading? When you have social interaction, your T cells improve.
Mhm.
Your immune system improves with love and care and sleep, and, and fear is not a virtue.
No, it's not.
Right? So there's so many things that I learned, and I thought, oh, I'm gonna help my patients by talking about this. And a good percentage of them were like, wow, that's pretty cool. Thank you. I'm gonna read that. I'm gonna look into that. And then I got the hypnotized ones, I call them. Like, they're not responding. You know, and I don't know if it's they figure, well, I'm just a chiropractor. Why should I be talking about such a deep issue like virology and immunology and the immune system? And I'm like, fine, okay. If you don't think that's my expertise, it isn't on paper, but I'm very well read. And what I'm doing is pointing you to articles as an educator that I am, that will inform you by epidemiologists and virologists that are not happen to be on CNN or Fox. These are other experts, full-on
Mhm.
experts, that
Mhm.
don't seem to have as much political pull or financial pull. And had people watching, virologists on YouTube talking about the truth, something that seemed more real, made more sense. Should we take precautions? Yes. How much and at what cost? And that's why we're
Mhm.
talking about stress today, because we are having a pandemic of mental illness now,
Yes,
right?
we are.
Suicide rates, diseases
Yes.
of despair, alcoholism, diabetes.
Yep.
And like you got into a second ago, you're going to go home and eat Twinkies and eat garbage, and then be afraid of getting sick. You're afraid of getting sick. You just made yourself sick.
Yes.
I don't know, correct my numbers on this, but I heard if you drank a can of Pepsi, the amount of sugar in there will decrease your immune system function somewhere around 50 to 60% for 2 hours.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. I mean, it astounds me that people will go to those behaviors when they're in fear.
Mhm.
And I thought, I looked up some things about what fear does to the mind. Fear actually narrows your focus.
It
Isn't that
has
good?
to. It has to.
Exactly. How do you survive if you can't see the tiger and you start paying attention to the trees? You
Yeah.
see the tiger, you're in there, and it's like, I'm going to survive this. But that does not give you growth options. That does
Well,
not give you creativity. It gives you, go to the past,
yep.
go to your past and see what worked for you, repeat the past behaviors. And I love that, because if you had tiger interactions before, you're obviously still alive. What you did in the past must have worked. So you'll do it again and again and again, and you'll stay alive.
Mhm.
But this isn't a tiger. What is this? This is something that we need to research and learn about. It's not as simple as a tiger. A tiger is simple, right? It's pretty darn deadly, and you got a sharp stick, like we talked about in the past, and
Yeah.
you got to be an Olympic athlete and a genius to figure out how to survive that. But that was from training in the natural environment. We live in an unnatural environment where there's books and there's PhDs and there's things to learn. So get to work, like you've said. I mean, this is why aren't you and I running around scared and crazy? Well, we understand the reality, and the reality is there's things we can do, there's things we can't do. Let's get healthy. I've never been healthier right now in my entire life. I cut out all the dairy products out of my life. I was off gluten before that. My exercise routines are phenomenal.
Yeah.
My resting heart rate's down to 48 beats per minute. I can
Jesus.
go on and on about it. I don't, but why am I like this? Why not? Why not do this now? I love being in shape. I got a bigger, more powerful stick, more motivation, right?
Oh, no, absolutely. And just to unpack what you were saying there a little bit, we just got back from the Keys, and people were like, "How can you take a vacation?" Well, I put my feet up in the sand. We watched sunsets. It was amazing. And took some boat trips and chased manatees. And they're like, the world's falling. And I'm like, trust me, I looked outside. There's no bodies in the street. Other people were just living life and enjoying it and doing those things they have to do. Well, aren't you worried about this virus? No, I got 4 teenage daughters here at home. They're running around right now doing some things. And one of them just, I think, started a fire in the kitchen with a quesadilla or something, So, it's like, if I care about my kids, if I was worried and I have enough knowledge about these things, my butt would be in a cabin up in northern Minnesota with a gun over my shoulder. I'm not
Absolutely.
worried about a coronavirus. Why? Because I studied it and I got rid of that fear. I used that stress as a weight to build a muscle, an intellectual muscle,
Mm-hmm.
and I stayed with it. I didn't let it crush me. What we know about stress is needed. That's how you build muscles, whatever. But we call those EU stresses. EU stresses, EU. Stresses that actually cause growth, cause improvement in life. We need those things to move forward. And then we have what's distress, DIS, distress. With distress, that is where you're full of these hormones called cortisol, and you're full of these hormones called adrenaline. And those hormones, those chemicals, it's amazing, beat up on your body if they're there for a long time. The cool thing is they really make it work great for 15 minutes, maybe half an hour. So when you can psych yourself up and fight the saber-tooth tiger or lift the weight or get through the board test or get through your spelling bee for you kids who are listening, that's a good thing. You want that, and you want to learn how to properly use that energy. But you don't want to have the stress that you have going into your algebra test in high school 24/7. You don't want that all the time, because it's very hard on your heart, on your immune system, because you're gearing to fight that tiger. You're gearing to fight that bully. And here's the interesting thing. I do a lot of life coaching. I've been doing this for decades. I don't advertise it, but I'm hired by some, very powerful people to do some coaching. And we talk about, okay, your spouse or your business partner, you're having a conversation. If you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, you are not allowed to have a significant conversation with them. Why? Because you have too much stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline in your brain, and you cannot move a short-term memory into a long-term memory with those chemicals present. It's impossible. They've done all the studies. It's impossible. So the worst thing you can do is argue with your spouse or your partner, or your friend or your neighbor, your kid, when you're upset and you're angry, because guess what? You're not going to remember the conversation well. You can't. And you're not going to use that part of your brain over my left eyebrow here, called my dorsal medial lobe. You're not going to use this part of your brain, which is your seat of wisdom and in processing. You can't use it. It's actually shut down. So basically, you have people flipping on CNN and Fox News and MSNBC, and they're getting upset. And guess what? It goes right back to, we call it our reptilian brain, the brain stem and the midbrain. Mm-hmm. It goes to the part of the brain for fight or flight, for fighting that saber-tooth tiger. And guess what? You're running like a caveman. You are not this advanced neocortex, which is up here. You're not this advanced intellectual adult that's been around for 6 million years. You're a hairy ass caveman beating people over the head with a club. And you tried it, like you said, they're hypnotized. They are, because you can't form insight, wisdom. You can't even process. You couldn't do an algebra test if you're that upset. I'll give you an example. If I grab a woman or a guy and I shake them and I yell at them, come on, you can do it, and shake them and all that and say, okay, now I want to see your best handwriting.
You're right.
Right?
Yeah,
You can't.
exactly.
Hands shaking, adrenaline's going. You can't even remember. If I said, okay, I yell and I scream and I get you upset with fear and anxiety, I'm yelling, and then all of a sudden I sit down and say, okay, who was the third president of the United States? You can't even recall memories that you even have there, because the way our nervous system works is fight or flight. It turns off all unnecessary programs, which is great. That's what you want it to do. If my fat ass is running from a saber-tooth tiger and I see a tree, I want my eye-hand coordination reaching for the branch. I want increased visual acuity. So is that a big enough branch to grab, or is that too small? Nope, grab the one above. That's how fast my brain will work to survive. I'm not thinking deep philosophical concepts like, is this virus really that bad? We've had worse ones before. Is this, why are only 80-year-olds with high blood pressure dying? Is it really serious for my kids to worry about? What does the research show? Yeah, 50 people died from it today in Minnesota, but 110 people die in Minnesota every day, every year, 365 days a year. And about 30% of those are over 70 with respiratory disease. If I do the algebra, has the needle moved? And of course, we know it hasn't. But does the needle move? That high intellectual logic and processing doesn't happen in the president of fear.
Exactly.
Now, Fred,
well, one of the things we know, if you look at in history, is when we've made great advancements in philosophy. For example, the ancient Greeks, they had their bases covered. They were living well. They weren't in a chronic state of stress and fear. So different parts of the brain can take over, and we can be creative, and we can be logical, and we could take notes, right? Because we weren't in constant stress. So the kind of stress we're under right now is shutting down so many things in our brain's ability to live properly. And the irony is that this is making our immune system weaker. It'd be bad enough if it just made us fat and it just made us have a skin rash and vomit or something, but it's doing the exact opposite of what we should normally be doing to try to get ourselves in a healthier state. I mean, and you think about loneliness and how that's related to stress. I read this article that said that being punched in the face by a stranger creates a certain amount of cortisol, obviously, right? A stress hormone.
You can measure it. You can do a blood draw and measure it.
That's what they did. And they compared that to someone who's chronically lonely, the same amount of cortisol in their body. So chronic loneliness is as bad from a stress standpoint as it is to be punched in the face by a stranger. I found that shocking. But when I got into it a little bit, I'm like, that's how social we are as humans, right? We're group people. We're social. We're a society of people that like to get together. I read one of Mark Sesson's books a while back, Primal Connection, and he talked about groups of 250. Those were like tribal numbers that worked really well.
Yep.
And and once it got into 300-400, it broke into another group, and that group went off and ran off. And I see that happen. I got to go skiing a lot. And if I get 9 people to go skiing, partially because of the chairlift holds 2, 3, 4 people, people start breaking off because they have different, I want to go on that hill. I like to ski moguls. That's too icy for me. And pretty soon it just breaks off into groups of like-minded people that are skiing at a similar level. And I see that in life as well. We like to divide up in skill sets and familiarity sometimes. And then I think it's healthy, obviously, to be around people that are massively different than you, because that's where you learn. But it's nice to have the warmth of familiarity mixed with an occasional people that have nothing to do with you and you can't even fathom, because then you can learn something. That's one of the beautiful things about it, living in a diverse country. There's so many different cultures that you can hang around once in a while and go, wow, that's how they think. That's the food they eat. That's funny. This is their sense of humor. But with the stress that we have in our society right now, I think what we need is some coping mechanisms, some ways to deal with this stress. What would you say if someone says, well, I'm just plain stressed, because I know how you deal with stress and I know how I do, but the average person watching this podcast that hasn't read the volumes of stuff and doesn't have the physiology and the neurology that you and I have, what would you say? Maybe give us three things that you think to yourself, okay, there's three strategies I can do to deal with my stress.
Oh, absolutely. I can give you three easy ones. The first one is processing. Should I be stressed about this? Can you do anything about it? Do you just accept it? You know, you can't change the weather here in Minnesota. You can get on a plane and move for a week like I did, but you can't change that. So a lot of it's processing. You know, yeah, if it's the day before your taxes are due, instead of stressing about it, call your accountant. Can I do something about it? Oh yeah, you can push it off for 6 months. Okay, start processing it. Learn. The number one thing with fear is the fear of the unknown. The more we know about things, even though you think you have, you know, you should be afraid of your opponent if you're in a football game or a boxer, you know, but the more you know about it, the lower the fear is. The fear of the unknown creates anxiety. So like when my kids, I'm afraid of going to the school today. It's the first day of school. Guess what we did the day before? We drove there. Okay, here's the parking lot. Here's the door we're going into. I know when I do public speaking, I always get there the night before. I walk in and say, okay, where's the projector? How many seats? Where's the bathroom? You know, where am I going to have my coffee cup? I do that. So you go through these rituals so you can become familiar. And as you say, do the research, do the education of yourself to lower that. It's very important. So people right now, if whatever the stress is in your life, like you say, oh, my kids or my husband or this, okay, what can you do about it? They always throw out the what. Well, I can't do anything. And then you ask, is that true? And of course, it's never true. You can get help. Like you said, humans are social beings. Call in the troops. Okay, I can talk to a psychologist, a marriage counselor, my priest, my minister, my rabbi. I can bring in anybody. Who can I talk to help me with the situation? You'd be amazed at how many patients, I'm sure it's with you, Doc, who call me, said, yeah, my grandma has this type of cancer. What should we do? And I'm a chiropractor. And I said, okay. It's like, I may be a chiropractor. I know nothing about oncology, though I do. But I said, I want you to do A, B, and C. Here's the doctor you go to. Go see if you can get into this hospital. I've heard good things. You pull in your resources. So that's the first thing. One, process, pull into your resources. The second thing is move. When you're sympathetic, when you're in fight or flight, stress, the fastest way to burn it off, quote unquote, is to move, work out. I don't want to lift weights. You don't have to lift weights. Go for a walk. Go up and down. Oh, it's freezing outside. It's minus 17. I live in Minnesota. Do you have stairs in your house? Of course you do. Go up and down them 50 times today. 50 times. I want you to go up and down. Get moving. Throw a yoga tape in. You know, you can download a YouTube video. You have to move.
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
Let me just add this, like as far as cold temperatures, I mean, do you have a hat? You have mittens? You got a jacket? You got a mask? I'm sure you got a mask. Got probably 20 of them. I recently got into this ruck packing, right? I load my backpack up with about 30 to 40 pounds, throw it on my back. I get all my outfit on. You know, Buffalo's a little warmer than Minnesota, but it still gets pretty nasty. And we have a bike path, and it's oftentimes covered in, like, they plow it occasionally, but once in a while it's just ice and stuff. So I bring crampons. People don't know what those are. It's a rubber mesh that goes around your shoe and has metal spikes on the bottom. I bring those with me. I bring two different types, a really spiky one, then one just kind of for ice. Sometimes I'm taking them off because to get out there, it's not as bad. But when you got that much weight on your back and you're going for a walk, I just love that feeling of dragging that weight around. And it gets me ready for my Rocky Mountain hikes too, all the musculature of the back and everything from holding on that backpack. And I get out there and I think, you know, I'm breathing fresh air. I'm getting maybe some sunshine. Maybe not on my not a lot of my skin is exposed. My eyes are at least seeing it. I'm getting visual stimuli from seeing different trees moving, and there goes a rabbit, there goes a chipmunk. And it's better than sitting on my treadmill, watching educational videos. Even though those are phenomenal, it's half the reason I can talk intelligently about this kind of stuff. I'm always researching and stuff, but to get out there and feel that get into nature. For some people that's not possible. I understand that you have orthopedic issues, you got all kinds of problems, but for anybody that's able to get out there and just go for a walk with a little bit of weight on, you get a weight vest. I do the backpack because I want the muscles of hiking, because I use a backpack when I hike, but a weight vest is going to distribute that weight evenly. I tell all my osteoporotic women, get a 10-pound weight vest, wear it around the house, get your bone density checked. Let's be scientific. Take your supplements, eat calcium-rich vegetables, wear your weight vest, and let's do another bone densitometry in 6 months and see if it happens. And when someone gets their bone density more dense, I'm sure you've done this, women celebrate this and have so much joy because they've been sold that, okay, you're getting old, you're starting to turn to sand, you're going to dust, and you're going to burp, and you're going to break a hip, and there's not a lot you can do. So here's your Fosamax, here's your Beniva, whatever. Yeah. And the truth is, okay, these drugs, do they dense? That's not my area. Fine. But what can I do? Give them the natural answer, which is to do that. But like you're saying, moving, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, part of the autonomic you're talking about, but people should just be aware of these. It's not that difficult. And the parasympathetic is going to be where you're going to cool off, digest, be creative. That's the beautiful stuff. If you always live there, you get pretty soft though, right? Because you're not going to be motivated to do much in that state, but you will digest your food, get it into your muscles so you can build them up when you turn on the sympathetic, which is more stressful. And I know sports, I've read this interesting article about how when someone's in the zone in sports, they're actually playing in their parasympathetic nervous system, where most of the time you want the fight, flight, the action, like a football player is going crazy out there. Like you say, yell at a football player, right? He's going to go out there and he's going to perform, but don't make him write a composition about Plato or Socrates after screaming in his face, especially if he's not real aware of that information. He's got to really strain to get it. It's not your time, right? But yeah, to get out there and burn off what you are designed to be. I get what you're saying. So that's number 2, is to move. Yeah. Awesome. What would you give us for number 3?
So for number 3 is a little different. Make sure you have those things in your life that balance your nervous system. Of course, me and you are chiropractors. We're going to go right to chiropractic, massage therapy, yoga. Do you meditate? Do you go to church? Look at your lifestyle. You have to have a balanced lifestyle. So, if you have a scale and you're imbalanced, if something's way up here, you have to put something on the other side. For example, when I know I have a stressful week at the clinic, I take more naps. I do. I actually schedule them. I'm like, you know what? On Thursday, I just got up from a nap. Sorry, I just got up for a nap. I don't know if you sent me these questions ahead of time, but I'm like, nope, I need a nap. It's been a rough week. We're busy. I'm going to schedule an hour or half an hour where I take care of myself. That self-care, that's the big term they use now. It's like they call it self-care, and I think it's just being smart, is you have to build that in. Now, it's just not exercise. I mean, you have to go get your adjustments. You have to get your acupuncture. Whatever that is, you have to have something that balances the scales, and that includes food, right? So, if you're going to have a stressful day, if you have a test or something going on, your boss is going to require something, the couple of days before, you should be eating the best, right? You should be sleeping the best. Treat yourself as an athlete. We just got through the Super Bowl, and everyone's freaked out because some Masters guy, 43 years old, went down to a team that was crap, and in 1 year turned them around in a pandemic. Now, whether you like Brady or not, and I know you don't like him because you're from Buffalo, but whether you like
not true.
But a lot of people are like, oh, he keeps winning. Well, of course. Right. Why aren't we studying what he does? Exactly. Study the winners. And what did the winners do? When right before the Super Bowl, he texted everyone on that team weekly, 55 players, and said, stay focused, stay on it. How's your diet? how's your sleep? This is a true story. I know some people on the inside. And he would text them and say, what are you eating this week? I know we're down here, but make sure you're eating your good food, because
That's
you go
awesome.
off and have all that seafood and pasta. If that's not your normal diet, you better be careful.
Hmm.
That type of winning, that type of balancing out the scales is what you need to deal with stress. If it's, you're not going to avoid stress. You're not going to avoid stress. If you know that, you're going to a wedding or a family event, Thanksgiving, where you're going to have some relational stress, then prepare yourself. Don't drink beer and eat Twinkies right beforehand, because your brain is not going to be equipped to deal with what's going on. Prepare yourself. It's all about preparation. And if you know there's less gas in the gas tank, here's the cool thing. It's choice. Drive to the gas station and put gas when it's on E. There's a little idiot light that says low fuel. Why don't you do that? We all know that. We all have that. It's called symptoms. When I'm tired, I don't feel good. And if I'm grumpy, you're an adult. Stop. Okay, Fred, why are you grumpy? Oh, all right. Well, I got the back pain. Well, we're working on that. Why am I grumpy? Oh, wow. I went from 88 degrees and sunny, beautiful paradise to, being in Minnesota minus 20. I went from nobody talking about the pandemic to, the world's going to end, all in a 3-hour plane trip. Amazing. So I'm saying, okay, what do I need? All right, I'm going to up some B vitamins, actually up my B complex. I'm going to need a little more sleep and, a little more water. I was drinking coffee there, but I'm like, that's only my third cup. I usually drink 2 or 3 cups a day in the morning. I only have 1 or 2 in the morning. Why? I cut down that caffeine because I know that I'm under stress. I don't have the extra margin in my body. So I guess the third thing would be balancing out the scales, that self-awareness of where you are. You got to know where you are. If we were playing Monopoly, right? If we were playing Monopoly, you would know if you're on Atlantic Avenue or if you're on, Baltic or wherever. You would know where you are. Or if you're on Go to Jail, you would know where your piece is. Here's the amazing thing. If you're watching mainstream media instead of the man or woman in the mirror, guess what? You don't know where you are. You're listening to someone telling you where your piece is on the game board. You know what? Look down at your feet. Where are you? If you're a 25, 35-year-old healthy person who only gets one cold every 2 years, you shouldn't be scared.
Yep.
If you're a 25, 30, 40, 50-year-old who's on 2 medications, including high blood pressure medication, you have diabetes, you have IBS, you have lung problems, and you're overweight, look at your feet. Yeah, you should be scared. Let's do something about it. That self-analysis is so important for stress.
Take that fear and put it into action.
Yes.
Right. I'm like I was saying, that you and this patient of mine, as well as myself, to say we have the warrior gene sounds, kind of like wild. But at the same time, if it does mean that we can't sustain fear for a long period of time, what do we do with it? Well, education is a form of action. In the old days, you got the sharp stick and started sticking the tiger with it. Today, what can you do is you can get on any imaginable website filled with unconscionable amounts of data, or come and talk to your chiropractor if he doesn't understand what's going on. Talk to another healthcare professional, someone that is a little bit detached from the sort of gravy train, I guess you'd call it, that has been created in big pharma and their effect on mass media. I was listening to Joe Rogan the other day, and he said mass media is not mass media anymore. They're losing people at an alarming rate.
Yes.
Just like California is losing people at an alarming rate, New York is losing people at an alarming rate. Why? Well, we're being sold a lot of lies, and we're being taken advantage of, and we're not going to stand for it anymore. If my governor is going to bankrupt the state, creating some kind of crazy circus, stuffing people in nursing homes, as most people know, and killing 9,000, I think it is, due to poor judgment, but be on TV every day telling you how great he is, and then joking with his brother, who throws him softballs during interviews on CNN News, and everyone's gathered around talking about spaghetti sauce. Okay, and then he wrote a book okay, fantastic. I don't know where you got the time to do that since you were so hard at work. That kind of thing is a frustration. But what do I do to take action? Well, I have a bunch of plans to take action in this arena, and but people oftentimes will sit static. And that second point you said about movement, being still is not a human state. We're not rocks. We're not turtles. We're not squirrels. We're not chickens, right? That's a little crazy. And we're not children. We're not running around screaming and yelling, even though that would probably be great. A little primal screaming right now would probably work out well. But be able to be educated enough, read more, get enough information in, that you can create a scenario where you feel empowered. Because when you turn on the mass media, what do you hear? They tell you how to think. Well, I used to listen to the State of the Union address, and then I would turn on Fox and CNN and see the difference in how they described it, right? Who's ever in there, who's ever in there gets their butt kicked by one.
It doesn't matter who's in there, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, one loves him, one always hates him. And the political, it's so obvious, it's disgraceful. But they would sort of tell you what he said. And I would think about it. I'm thinking, why do people watch this? Why do I want to know what he said? I just listened to him. I know what he said. Well, okay, well, here's how you should feel about it. Okay, thank you. I mean, they don't tell you outright, here's how you should feel. But how did you feel about that, Rona? Or how'd you feel about that, Clark? And then they tell you, I'm like, yeah, I agree with Rona. I agree with Clark. Okay. Have your own feelings, have your own mind. You need someone to tell you what to think. How lazy are you? Come on, get an understanding of what's out there. Right?
Yep, absolutely. And I don't know how far off the reservation we can go with this stress thing. Because, I'm looking at the societal things, and I'm a big history buff. And, one question people always ask me when I talk to my friends and my history groups is, how did Nazi Germany happen? How did Rwanda happen? And I go, easy. I use one word, stress. And they're like, what? Stress, fear, and anxiety. After World War I, the Germans were so defeated, they were crushed. They're watching their kids starve in the middle of the street. They're picking through garbage cans. And that stress, that constant chronic stress we talked about, shuts down the part of the brain, the neocortex, that allows you to expand, to love, to connect, to have creativity, to connect with your neighbor, to your fellow man. So if you wonder why, you had the Holocaust and how can a whole population allow that to happen? There had to be people jumping up and down and say, no way. Because you think about it, not everyone had a rifle. It's like, how can 50 soldiers go into a neighborhood of 500 and get them out of there? Well, if 500 people rush 50, 100 may die. But guess what? The soldiers be gone. Sorry, it's called a numbers game. Yeah. Well, same thing in Rwanda. You had one group of people that genetically were exactly similar to the other, and they had so much fear that they were going to be wiped out, they started attacking their neighbors. Now, think about this. Same thing happened in the Balkans, that your neighbor is going to kill you because they're Muslim or they're Catholic or they're Eastern Orthodox. Imagine hearing that on the radio, the mass media, and all of a sudden, the person you borrowed a cup of sugar from last week, you're taking a machete to.
Yeah.
That's how powerful fear is. And I hate to take it to that end point, but I'm being quite honest. And this is, I'm not a conspiracy person. I'm just telling you how the brain works. If you stay steeped in this fear and anxiety, it changes how the part of your brain called the thalamus works. Your thalamic integration and filtering change, and you can't even see goodness, happiness, positivity, hope. And if you ask me, they're just removing hope from everybody. And the majority of the people, 51, 52%. I'm glad I'm not in that because I saw it coming. I don't know if you know this, Mike. My first podcast on COVID was over 13 months ago. Before anything ever happened. I put a quick little podcast about what was going to happen, what was going to work. And people said, Fred, you're crazy. And of course, nope, I'm 100% right. But no one sent me a Christmas card and apologized for what they were saying about me on Facebook. Imagine that.
Yeah.
But so understanding socially what's happening with this mass fear. They call it what? Mass hysteria, right? Where you can
Mhm.
see things. And yeah, it is mass hysteria. We have mass hysteria. We are changing how our brains work because we're watching this mass media saying people were dying in the street. You look out the window. I'm looking right now. I see a snowbank. There's nobody dying in the street. I think our the matriarch of our family or our neighborhood, she's been there forever. She's about 90. She's get a little sick because her relatives are over, but I don't see anyone. There's been COVID up and down the neighborhood. It was just a bad cold for everybody. So not only do you all know someone who's had it, who's recovered from it, who's not afraid of it, and you're not seeing bodies in the street, but because you have this fear and anxiety, it changes how your brain processes and you stop trusting your own senses.
Yep. Exactly. I mean, like you're saying, fear is designed for a short-term survival recognition. And I'd seen a study one time where they looked at the difference between chronic and acute stresses, the long-term stressors and the short-term stressors. And that the short-term stressors, certain people were very good at those. Maybe those are the warrior genes, right? And then other people were better at the chronic stressors. And the acute stress person would be someone who could kick a field goal in the Super Bowl when it's the tie game, from 55 yards, and he puts it through the center. A field goal kicker has to be good at the acute stress, right? Because what's bigger than the entire world staring at you, wondering if you're going to kick the field goal through and decide the game?
Yeah, when you weigh 160 pounds,
Yeah, if you've been playing soccer your whole life. You gotta love when a field goal kicker actually tackles somebody when they.
I love that. That's my best thing.
He does a good job at it. But then you have the the more chronic stress personalities. Now, chronic stress people don't do well with acute stress.
No.
And acute stress people don't do well with chronic stress. So the chronic stressors usually are relationships and finances. You can have acute versions of stress in those categories, of course, but you think about the need to bring in income and do your job properly and pay your bills. That's always kind of there. And even if you have a lot of money, you're still wondering, how am I going to keep it? Where am I going to put it? Who's trying to get it? So there's a chronic stress to finances. And then in relationships, of course, there's a chronic nature to that it could be a stress, making sure your kids are in order and you're being a good lover and companion to your spouse, to your significant other, and to your friends, being a good loyal friend and checking up on them and making sure they're doing well in times when they're not doing so well. But those two stressors, I do believe, and tell me what you think, that people are designed to be better or worse at those than other people. I'm pretty good at acute stress. I think I'm okay at chronic stress. I probably had to work on that. But the acute stress, when something big blows up in front of me, I'm usually good at handling it. I know you are. You're like an ER type of guy. You can have if your eye is hanging out of your head and Fred's there, something good's going to happen to you. It's going to get better. Fred's going to do the best thing possible, and I think I'm the same way. But tell me in your life what you've seen as far as like acute stress and chronic stress and how it affects you and those around you.
Well, let's bring it back to how we're designed as humans. So if you look at us as a tribe, you said what, 200, 250? So if we're a village, if we're a tribe, we work symbiotically. So you're going to have someone who's the good spear chucker, right? Mm-hmm. He's going to be the guy who's going to take down the woolly mammoth. Then you have the one who's really fast, who can rush at the woolly mammoths and like get one off. Then you're going to have the one who's really good at carving it up. And then you're going to have one who's just a big brute, kind of like me. Throw all the meat on me. I'll carry it back to the cave. I can't throw a spear as good as you, but I can carry that out. We're not going to waste any of it, right? Yeah. So as a village, as a tribe, as a community, as a family, we all have special gifts. And that's developed over evolution and natural selection. So if you think about generation after generation and generation, you're going to have those wise ones that are leaders. They're usually old and gray and covered up in a corner, and they have makeup on, and they call them shaman or sha women. And they talk to them, and they have the chronic stress. White man has come into our country. What do we do? This disease is happening. What do we do? And they think about it for a day or two, and they come up with a great action plan, to use
Hmm.
terms we use now in the world.
Hmm.
So you have to have those. And then you have that leader, right? That acute leader who can say, oh no, I heard a noise, and they go and they kill the tiger or the invader and come back with blood on their hands. Like, yeah, I got it. Hold my beer. I'm going to go wipe these out. And they have no problem doing that. But you put chronic stress on them, like you said, they're not wise at all. It's not that you need all of that. I'm very big on being a specialist. Be a specialist. We weren't designed to be generalists. We were
Hmm.
designed to be in a community of
Yep.
specialists. This one's really good at cooking. This one's good at gathering. This one's good at farming. This one's good at hunting. This one's a good protector. This one's a good nurturer. If our kids are sick, bring them over to Aunt Emily, she'll get them better. By working that together, and that's the one thing about modern life, it's separated that all out. So now we don't know how to deal with stress, and we're afraid to talk. Like, I am not good with long-term stress. My wife is.
Hmm.
And thank God I found her, because I will talk about a situation that I can't figure it out because it's longer than 15 minutes,
Hmm.
to deal with it. She'll have it figured out in days or weeks. Oh, we need to do this and this. Let's think about this. And she's very calm about that. Where that situation blows me up because it's not big 15-minute chunks, right?
Yep.
And that's okay. So what we need to do, like I talk about, processing, what do you do when you're under stress? Get those experts around you who have those strengths where you're weak. It's okay to talk to your chiropractor, or your GP, or your rabbi, or your Uncle Buck, or whoever that's going to go ahead and give you the information you need. And as we get older and get experienced, we'll be able to handle those situations better because we have all that behind us, that experience of asking other people. But unfortunately, our our society right now is isolatory. So not only are we telling people to stay home, but don't go talk to people,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Because talking, and I love this, don't go to church and sing because you could give them COVID. Are you effing kidding me? You're not
Hmm.
allowed to sing. The most positive thing. I mean, I'm terrible in church when I sing, but I know when I go to church, I'm full of all my good, happy hormones. I mean, everyone who's really into their religion or their spirituality, and I'm sure you're the same. When you go to church, you feel better when you leave.
Absolutely.
That's a good neurology shot, good immune system shot. They're actually instructing people to do those things to turn off your neurology and your immune system. That way you can be bigger puppets and allow yourself to be controlled. It is
Well,
not voodoo, it's not conspiracy. That's how we work. So what I would say is make sure, if you're acute, if you work good in acute, stay there. If you're chronic, work there. If you know where your strengths and weaknesses are, call in the troops, call your friends. If you have to Zoom, put the Zoom on and
mhm.
start Zooming people to say, hey, what do I do with this? My kids are thinking this, start communicating more. During this pandemic, during this stressful time, we should actually be getting stronger. We've never had this much free time. I know I haven't in our lives, and you
Yeah,
won't again.
that's true. There are going to be certain things when we go back to normal that people are going to be they're going to miss about what we have. Some of the things that we're doing right now that are positive,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot more time to read for me.
Yes.
There's times to do these podcasts. I didn't do podcasts before COVID, so I wanted more creative outlets and be able to communicate with people like yourself. But I think one of the things that I was thinking about some of the stressors that I have, and certainly the way the world is responding to the virus and the conspiracy theories that I have to help people debunk or say,
Yeah.
that's interesting. I don't know what to tell you about that. That's an interesting thing right there. But one of the things that I think is stressful, because communication to me is everything. It's so important that we're allowed to communicate. And when we start building these camps of hatred for each other, the
Mhm.
mask wearing, the non-mask wearing, the black and the white, and the female and the male, and the old and the young, and the hipsters, and It's unbelievable. In the North and the South, I mean, how old is that? And Democrats, Republicans, blah, blah. It's nauseating how many groups there are that don't like each other. I don't mind if there's groups. You got a group and you feel warm and cozy in that dynamic, but to hate the other side is the problem. And I think one of my biggest problems right now is the cancel culture idea. That if I, as a white male, say something that somebody contrives as meaning something that it may not even mean, I can get myself in trouble. You know, why is this bad? Okay, it's not bad because it's going to allow me to continue if we don't do it, and I'm going to be this horrible person. It's bad because I wasn't able to, I may be shying away from really expressing my true feelings that somebody might learn from, or I might learn from. If I say something dopey and it offends somebody of some group, I would love to know that I offended somebody, and I'd love to know why that is offensive, and let's talk about it, because that might not be what I meant, or that might come out of my ignorance. I don't know everything. I'm not perfect. I could say offensive things. I don't want to. That's never my intention. I don't like offending people. But do I want to speak my truth? And how stressful is it that we're creating a world that's even more harsh on people? Even their past, you go back in their past and they did something dumb when they were 18. And now all of a sudden they're this horrible person that needs to be like eliminated from popular culture and not allowed to speak anymore. And then they have to go on some apology tour, you know, because they did something when they were 18. I mean, we did stupid things when we're kids. That's the beauty of being young. You get to be dumb and you're supposed to be forgiven. What's that?
We did stupid things at chiropractic school.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The stuff I did in the weight room, it just wasn't insanity. But yeah, I mean, we're learning. Why can't I just don't, I think that's like a stress for me, right? Okay. Another stress that I had is when I had my third daughter, I thought, wow, I have 3 daughters, no sons. I better get my understanding of girls together. I better understand women, the female mind, and what it's like to be a good man 110%. I want to be the best father on earth. So what did I do? I did some reading. I did some research. I carefully looked at how women respond versus men to situations. So I didn't get myself in trouble constantly at the dinner table, right? It's no fun, right? Some people would say, oh, he just gonna get bowed down or whatever. Not at all. What I did was get smart enough to communicate at a level that wasn't going to be off-putting. So, and I still did, and I failed 100 times, don't get me wrong. But I made an effort, and I did better than I would have if I didn't care. I wasn't going to, you know, just say man things all the time and let people get offended and cry in the corner. I carefully thought about, okay, how is that going to make somebody feel? And I think you and I said this years ago that it's kind of, I know with my one daughter, I don't ask her what were you thinking. I ask her, what were you feeling? Or what are you feeling? Yeah. Or, you know, I wouldn't even ask her what she's thinking. I'll say, what are you feeling? Because, you know, we can get into the female mind and that's a whole nother podcast. You and I talking about the female mind. Now that'll be fun. We definitely have to do that and see how much trouble we can get ourselves in.
We can with all our daughters. We probably should do that one.
Come on. That's our next podcast for sure.
That's going to be valuable.
The female mind, according to Dr. Fred and Dr. Mike. If nothing else, that'll be a form of comedy for people, right? It's like, oh, they think they know something. Okay, let's see what they know.
we just give them all our little episodes in the past where we screwed up.
All the errors.
The errors. All right, here's error number 212. You know?
I can't believe I said that, but yes, I did. I said that. I really did say that. But understand, I was under a lot of stress. Yeah. All right. So yeah, anything else you want to add to this? Because I think what I wanted to accomplish today, I think we did it.
Okay.
We talked about how important it is to understand the inner workings of the human mind and physiology. I'm always going in, and I'll never stop getting people to understand that we've been here unknown amount of time, but I love the 165,000 years. It's just my favorite number. I have, you know, there's some data to support that. So I go with that one. Doesn't really matter. It's been super long. And we've been trained by the environment, and we've survived, and a lot of us didn't make it. And you and I are the genome that made it. So congratulations. And everybody listening, you made it. Your genome is smart enough to make it. Your people just ran through people like rhinoceroses and tore them in half. I'm a good thrower. I used to pitch baseball, so I'm sure I was throwing spears and rocks and taking people out from the sides because I could run around relatively fast. That genome was supported because it survived. So let's study, like you say, study the winners. And I think as we're doing this, understand how stress is affecting your body and how your mind does this. If you're going to have this ability to recall memories very, very accurately, if that's a bad memory, you just washed yourself full of brain chemistry that's pretty negative.
Yeah.
And sometimes forgiveness is the answer. One of the ways of getting out of stress for me is just forgiving myself or someone and saying, I'm not going to forget that, but I'm going to forgive it. I did the best with the information I had at the time. I got a little emotional maybe, and I kind of made a mess, but hey, I never claimed to be perfect. Say your apologies and get on with your life and don't repeat it. When you see that happening again, try a new behavior, right? And I think that it's important that I want to encourage everybody listening to study how the human mind works. Read Freud, read Nietzsche, read the Bible, read ancient wisdoms, get yourself together on how man works. Because to me, wisdom is you saw point A, it went to point B, and then it went to point C, like history, right? And then you saw point A go to B to C, A, B, C, A, B, C. Pretty soon, A happens. You're like, oh, I think B is going to happen. Then B happens. You're like, well, C's next. C is happening. Yep. And then you call it, like you did with the pandemic, you call it, and everyone's like, how did you know? You're so wise. Well, I've been observing ABC, ABC so many times that I've developed an understanding or a wisdom, because where did that come from? Repetition. So the mother of skill. So for me, that those are important points. Study, read human behavior, get good books. That'll help you. And I didn't say much about this, but prayer and meditation, how you separate those, we can get into that as another one. But when you disengage from the here and now, your body is able to repair itself.
Yes.
You think about sleep. We know that we sleep, right? If you just lifted weights all day and never went to bed, you'd be so skinny and atrophied, you'd be a disaster. But because you hit it heavy and then you sleep, your body repairs and builds more muscle. And it's doing that with cancer, diabetes, heart disease, and mental illness. So you got to have your rest. So what do? We can repair ourselves. You take naps. You probably meditate. I know you pray. So those are times when that parasympathetic nervous system, that healing, digestion, the good stuff, all happens at a higher rate. So I encourage people, and I want to demystify. Here, there's another podcast, demystification of meditation, right? Take some of this crazy loincloth, sit in the corner, levitate, spoon bending that people associate with meditation. Get rid of that and say, okay, meditation for the regular people, meditation for the masses or something. It's probably already a book out there, but something like that to get people to say, okay, how can I disengage from this chronic stress, thought, action world and spend some time away? We know sleep does it. Why not enhance that for 20 minutes in the middle of your day and get those systems to calm down, get that physiology back to normal?
Oh, I think that's fantastic. Those are great recommendations. And I have a further one, which is totally in your control. You don't even have to learn to meditate and do those things. Be careful what goes into your eyes and your ears.
Good one.
So I have a lot of my patients, I'll have them actually turn off the mass media. I said, if you want to know what the weather is, check your phone. But I want you to do a diet. You're so stressed out. I want you to go 30 days without watching mass media. Just, if you need to know the weather, it's Minnesota, I understand. Check your weather app on your phone. But keep yourself from no COVID news for 30 days. Yeah. Guess what? Some of my patients who've done that, they don't go back. And they're like, I'm so much better. I'm so much happier.
Yeah.
Because of our nervous system and how powerful this brain is, there are no casual interactions with the environment. I'll say it again. There are no casual, neutral interactions with your environment. Everything you see, everything you hear has to be processed, integrated, and digested.
Interesting.
And it's going somewhere, whether it's conscious or unconscious. There's a reason I don't want to slam certain music, but there's a reason I don't listen to a lot of like death metal or hip hop. I don't want, I don't want to hear words of, I have 4 daughters. I don't want to hear about bitches and hoes. I don't want to hear it. It's not good for my brain. I may like the beat, you know what I mean? Oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
I can lift weights to this. This is pretty cool. But I don't want to hear that stuff. Why?
I agree. I agree.
There's a
I'm
reason.
glad it's out there. I'm glad it's out there because people need to communicate.
Yes.
That's freedom of speech. Let it happen, and if somebody wants to listen to that and it turns them into half the devil, well, that's too bad. That's called freedom. You're just going to have to be stronger than that and realize, okay, that music obviously isn't written for me. I didn't grow up in those neighborhoods. I don't know what's going on. I try to be sensitive, and I read and listen to patients of mine that have been in those worlds and come from that stuff, whether it's death metal or rap. But and like you say, some of the beat is incredible. I mean, it really is infectious. It's the lyrics that get me, and I'm like, okay, like you say, I don't want that in my head. I did a news boycott years ago. And I still have one going since April, actually. Things come up on my phone, but I'm just researching things because patients tell me stuff. Oh, did you hear these numbers? And then I'll go research it in ways that I want to instead of hearing it through Anderson Cooper or some other puppet. So the attack puppet that he is. Oh, Mr. Nice Guy, but then he disembowels everybody he talks to that he doesn't agree with.
Yeah.
It's like that man's like such a wolf in sheep's clothing. I've never seen anything like it in my life.
All those things.
Anyway. So kind, he's so kind, so sensitive. Oh, really? Listen to what he does to people he disagrees with. I admire his intellect, but after that, please. Anyway, so when I was doing a news boycott, and someone came in and said, "Would you believe this Unabomber?" And I'm like, "The Unabomber? I don't know if you remember the Unabomber. It was like 1996 or something." And I'm like, "Well, what's that? You don't know about the Unabomber? He's like bombing people. He's some crazy person. They haven't found him, or maybe they found him by then or whatever." And I'm like, no. And they're like, oh, don't you feel like you don't know they couldn't figure out how I didn't know about the Unabomber. Yeah. And I said, I don't really watch the news because I think it's a show. I really don't, I think it's a bad source of information. It's biased and it's negative. And they go, well, and then I said, well, let's look at it. Since I don't know about the Unabomber, am I safer from the Unabomber? If I knew about him, what would I do? Because I think he was bombing mailboxes or something. You should open up your mailbox or something. I could be wrong about that, but he's mailing bombs. I know that. Yeah. So if I'm going to get a bomb from the Unabomber, whether I saw the newscast, laid in bed sweating all night with my loaded shotgun, or I put on a big helmet when I open my mailbox up, I mean, there's only so many things I can do. And then why would the Unabomber bomb me? I'm not worth bombing. I'm not bombable. If I blow up, not too many people care. If you're going to blow up, somebody famous or somebody, some horrible person, well, congratulations. But for me, I didn't. So why do I care? And then they thought, you got a good point. You don't know about the Unabomber, and you're not any less or more likely to be bombed. Right?
And some of that information could be incorrect. So Minneapolis, St. Paul went through some riots where some people got upset and started burning down our cities. Yeah. And St. Paul riots got within a mile or two of our home. So I didn't sleep for about 3 or 4 days, neither did my kids. And, one of my kids came in screaming because she was listening to or podcasting or Snapchatting a group of people and saying, there's a group of right-wing, redneck people going through with U-Haul trucks, shooting up people. Well, I happened to have the St. Paul police dispatch radio in my ear, and I knew what was going on. And I'm like, no, that's not happening. Why? Because I'm actually listening to the dispatch, honey, and it's not happening. Whoever's telling you is trying to get you upset, and they obviously have. But there are U-Hauls around. There's U-Hauls around. Honey, it's the end of the month, and people were moving,
Yeah.
And it's just a perspective. And so a lot of times you got to be careful what goes in your ears and your eyes, because it could be skewed to elicit an effect in you. And that's what the mainstream media is. They're trying to get you upset. Oh, I know I put this on my Facebook many times, but if our governor ever says it's the darkest day of the pandemic for the 80th time, I don't know how many darkest days you can have.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you kidding me? It's not the darkest days. You had 30 people over 80 who were sick with bad hearts, bad lungs, and fat and out of shape die. And you're telling me that's a dark day? You know, we call that genetic pruning.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so sorry. Oh, you can go ahead. Oh, there's a daughter right there. So
Yeah,
so
there's yeah,
so
the same here. We keep hearing the darkest days are now, or the darkest day is ahead of us. This is dark. And how long can you keep crying wolf like this before people just like, okay, how dark are you talking? Like, we had a little birthday candle. Now we have like an ember. Do we have just an ember to live by? The sun's not coming out tomorrow. The sun is not coming out. It gets so old, and it's been going on so long, and then, oh, we're suffering COVID fatigue. That was the next thing I heard.
oh yeah.
Oh, you're fatiguing out. I'm like, you better believe I'm fatiguing out. What are you talking about? Like, I don't care anymore. Well, if people that committed suicide during this thing, they couldn't take it anymore, right?
Yeah.
They couldn't care anymore. They don't care. They don't care to the point where they don't care to be alive. How sad
Yeah.
is that, right? So, I just hope people's mental health is focused on when this thing cools down, or they let it cool down, however you want to look at it, because that's a big wound right there.
I think that the interesting thing is that someone, and I don't know if they're trying to do some social engineering here, but they were successful. And I love sitting back and saying, wow, that was successful. Like when the New England Patriots deflated their balls and, learned to steal the signs, the hand signals and read lips of the opposite team. That is amazing. It's unethical, but that's amazing that you figured that out.
Sure.
That they're slowly manipulating us. You can walk outside and you don't see bodies in the street. All your relatives over 60 are not dead. Mm-hmm. So it's not a pandemic. It's not an endemic. We had an increase of a bug that probably has doubled the amount of deaths of those over 70. Now, here's the thing. Did it double because of COVID, or did it double because now we call everything COVID because like the flu's gone? 98% cure rate. That's impossible. When I told someone that the headline news on USA Today said that the flu has gone down 98%, they said, wow, that's amazing. And I go, are you brain dead? That's impossible. That is impossible. And I said, do you understand how impossible that is? And the average sheep, the average person who's been manipulated and hypnotized by this, whose brains have been turned off, their cognitive thinking, their intellectual, their wisdom, their positiveness, their critical thinking skills have been turned off because they're watching all this crap going in their brain. They look at me and say, well, Fred, it's because we're wearing masks. Well, if we're wearing masks or double masks and the flu goes away, then COVID should go away too. It shouldn't be going up. It's impossible. They're both about the same size.
Yeah.
And they look at me like, oh, so COVID, so the flu, influenza is going down because we're wearing masks and mitigating it. But COVID's going up because we're not wearing enough masks and mitigating it. I said, do you hear yourself? You sound like a toddler trying to explain, Newtonian physics. It doesn't go like that. And it's amazing how people's intellect has been shut off. Fear
just shuts it down. Yep. They sold fear to such a level to control people out of panic, and I don't know what else it is. I like I say, they give you reason to start to read and disseminate conspiracy theories. Yeah. I don't care who killed JFK. That's beyond me, and I don't care. I don't really care about aliens, to be honest with you. It's kind of interesting. I don't have a real strong opinion. But when you're affecting the lives of the entire planet, putting people into deep depression, you better have a good reason to be doing what you're doing. And the reasons are kind of hard to see at this point, in my opinion. Yeah. That's all I can tell people,
Well, and the numbers don't verify it. Oh, it's like the Spanish flu. No, it's not. There was bodies in the street. There was kids dying of Spanish flu. There was teenagers. There's 20-year-olds, 30, 40, 50-year-olds. It's not happening. Only the old and weak are dying. And guess what? The old and weak always die. So are they dying because of COVID, or do we rename everything they're dying from COVID? Now we have no flu deaths. That's impossible. It's just impossible.
And then you'll hear the stories of the younger people that have died, and you think, okay, you really got to get the health history right.
Yes.
Right. There was an MMA fighter. I don't know his name. I think he's about 24 years old. He had, and I might have the facts slightly off, but I know I have the basic premise of this. He had bacterial pneumonia and was on 4 different antibiotics. and trying to get better to do a fight. He
Mhm.
then was so beat up from the antibiotics. He had chronic diarrhea, lost all this weight, but was training for this fight because it was a once in a lifetime opportunity. He's able to just get well enough to do the fight. He actually wins the fight. And he's so devastated from the antibiotics, the chronic diarrhea, the training, and the fight. He basically is barely alive. And then he gets COVID. He gets COVID pretty bad. He's got this unbelievable cough and fever. He's bedridden. He's exhausted. And he lived. Okay. He lived. Well, he's 25 and he's a cage fighter. So he has all these strengths, but the reason he says I had this so bad, because everybody was interested in that, was because of the state at which his health had gotten to. Because somebody's young, it doesn't mean that they're healthy. It increases the likelihood that they're healthy. It doesn't mean that they are. People have clotting disorders, holes in their heart, and they don't know about it, right? Antiphospholipid antibody syndrome. Let's go with that one. Now, women find this out because they have trouble carrying a baby to term because of the clotting factors.
Yes.
Men have this condition and don't know it for a long time.
Until they stroke.
Until they have a stroke at 55 years old, and everybody's like, what was that about? What's he doing? He must have ate too many Twinkies. No, this guy has a clotting disorder. So when you put a stressor on the public and then you hyper pay attention to it and document it, you're going to see deaths that don't make sense. Do children get cancer? Unfortunately, yes. It's horrifying. The diseases are out there, and there's always caveats. There's going to be young people that die from whatever. But what are the big numbers? And that's where the fear and the stress comes in. Look at the numbers. Do you want to take this vaccine? Look at the numbers of who is likely to die from this. Do you fit into that category? Then you probably want to take the vaccine, because you're playing a game here. I'm taking something that's not very scientifically validated, that in its initial phases right now appears to be doing fairly well, I guess, from what they're letting us know. And then, but relative to me dying from a flu. And then what about next year's flu and the one after that? And where does it end? I'd like to know where this thing ends. That's what makes me interested is, if we don't build an antibody and we don't get ourselves healthy and we don't have that cross reactivity of a current antibody helping us with the next one, entertaining it while we make a specific one. What do we have ahead of us?
Well, I just think the whole concept of making us puppets to our environment, being pushed around, when, like you said, we're the winners. We're the top of the food chain. We survived. We beat the saber-tooth tiger. We beat the woolly mammoth. We survived ice ages. Yeah. We survived divorces. I mean, come on. We're at the top of the food chain. And then to say we're not, that we're just getting beat about, thrown back and forth like, a beach ball by the environment, that makes no sense at all. And they're brainwashing people because people know better. They're common sense. They go outside. There's no bodies in the street. There's sunshine. I feel better when I'm going. Oh, I've had a cold before. It's like, don't trust your own ears. Even if someone says they're not getting sick, don't trust your own eyes. Don't trust this. Watch this virtual reality called mass media and fear, and we're going to run the world on this. That makes no sense to me. I'm not a conspiracy guy. I just don't live that way. And people are like, Fred, are you worried about this? No, I'm not. Why?
Well, isn't it interesting?
Because I'm educated.
To me, it's interesting that, I was always taught, follow the money.
Yes.
And right now, I don't know the exact numbers, but I'd heard that the wealthiest people in the world have increased their income by 20% during the pandemic.
Yes.
Okay. Who's running the pandemic? Some of the wealthiest people in the world are running the pandemic. In other words, their rules, their regulations are the ones that we are following. Yeah. So why would you quit making those rules and regulations if they're serving your wealth at a 20% increase over 1 year's time? Someone needs to question that. When is this going to be? When do we start taking the training wheels off, letting us ride the bike? Have you made enough money yet? Okay, when do I get the freedom to think for myself and take my actions according to how I think I should live versus how I'm dictated to live? And talk about stress.
I agree with that. And again, it goes back to the social cultural thing that happened in countries, the Balkans and all that, where they can control society, and they put in all this fear, all these lies. Let's just say lies, not even mistruths, just straight out lies. And everyone, it just tore apart society, because you always benefit from separation than unification if you're trying to make money. If if you're the government, or if you're making guns, you always want a war, right?
Sure.
Peacetime doesn't serve big companies well. So I look at that and I'm like, wow, why are we so divided in mass and all? It's like, it makes no sense. I only see two divisions. I see the intelligent and fools. And only fools divide because of race, culture, religion, masks. So, when people say, oh, you have this privilege and that privilege, and I think that's totally foolish. Are you intelligent? Am I acting in a way, my personal behaviors, that distress yours? If it doesn't distress yours, guess what? Then that means I'm a good guy. You can't look at me and tell me I'm not a good guy without studying me,
That's right.
following what I do. Just like I would not look at you and say, because of your race, creed, religion, whether you wear a mask or not, there's something wrong with you. I have patients that wear masks and patients that do not. And that's their choice. Just like if they want to smoke pot or not smoke pot, or smoke a cigarette, or have a Twinkie. Now, I'm going to give them information that, when you're stressed out and you're sick and you're hurting, a Twinkie may not be good for you. Maybe you want a little water and a chicken breast and some broccoli. But I may give you that information. Maybe sitting down at your chair or desk at work for 8 hours a day without moving is the worst thing you can do for your low back. I need you to get up every hour, even if you're not going to pee, and walk around a little bit, just for 2-3 minutes, to keep things moving. I can give them that information, which is based in fact, and it's going to give them results. So that but we've learned one thing in this pandemic, and I want to see what you say about this, Doc. The mass media and everything that's happened, it's been amazing. Talk about hypnotizing. It has taught the average person not to trust their own intellect.
Yeah, I think and like you say, it widened the divide between the foolish and the intellectual, or the thinkers. Because you and I shut it off because we saw the ridiculous nature of it, and we have the ability to just go to other sources to find answers. Yes. And I really believe that they've shot themselves in the foot on this one, because even my most lackadaisical, easygoing patients that are just kind of going along with things but aren't real thrilled, they're going, yeah, the news is a joke. News is a joke. They're tired of the quote unquote experts telling them stuff. And at the same time, I don't want people shutting down on information. You don't say, well, all virologists are crazy. I hate them all. I hate them all. Ridiculous. No, be selective and follow the money and see who's telling the truth, and spend some time disseminating that, and and use your logic and your experience and your wisdom, and check with other people, check with the experts that are in your circle of friends. And that's why I think everybody needs a healthcare professional that stays current and stays involved, and if nothing else, just to point the way. A lot of times people ask me a question and I could answer it somewhat well, but I'm like, no, here's the guy, read this guy. Look up Bruce Lipton, look at Dispenza, look at Anthony Robbins, look at Wayne Dyer's stuff, open the Bible, read the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, I can go on forever, but sometimes you just need to be pointed in the right direction. And I think that's something that, as a doctor, which means teacher, that you and I we take seriously and we're good at, right? I want to enlighten people. I want to stop the suffering in the world. There's too much suffering. My job is to get people to express and learn and grow. Because what is life? What is the goal? We can get into the meaning of life. There's another podcast. But to me, it's about enlightenment. It's about growth. It's about moving forward. It's not harboring in the past and being miserable. It's about going forward. And I think when you go forward, you're less stressed. Living in the past I find very stressful, right? Because you're gonna keep harboring the same series of thoughts. You're gonna bring those back to and relive them. And like I said earlier, wash your body in that terrible brain chemistry of a miserable memory,
Mm-hmm.
right? We have the ability to hold these memories and relive them. A lot of times, you talk to a vet who's been through a miserable part of the war. I have a bunch of Vietnam vets in my practice. I'm always curious what they went through, but I don't want to put them through telling me the story. If it comes up naturally and it comes up because of a comment I made, I welcome the story, right? And if it helps them to talk about it, great. But maybe it doesn't. That's in the past. One guy was a colonel, and I can't even imagine what I can learn from him about war and about Vietnam. But I hate to put him through it. And he's told me a few stories and interesting points. He didn't like Jane Fonda too much. Remember her circus.
Yeah.
But other than that, he was a incredible man. But yeah, I think we covered it today, Fred. I think we did it, right? I think we got a lot of points out. I think that our viewers are going to learn to study the human mind, study the physiology of the body, learn how you're wired personally and how humans are wired. Because if you want somebody messing with you, you don't want someone brainwashing you, you don't want to be controlled, understand how they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You want to get out of jail? You better figure out that you're in jail, right? How do you get out if you don't even know you're in? What's your jail? What is your jail? How are you being controlled, right? You want to know who's controlling you? The person you can't criticize. That's who's controlling you.
And they don't have to do much once you've been under that chronic stress. You think about, they don't have elephants in the circus anymore, but how did you control an elephant, the strongest land animal? Well, when they were born, they put a strong rope around them and put a stake in the ground, and the elephant couldn't move. So when it felt that rope around its foot and pulled a little bit, it knew it couldn't move. Well, after a while, they were just putting him into the ground with their hand to, a 5-ton elephant. It doesn't matter because the elephant believed it was stuck there.
Yeah.
And, that's real important. I always tell, and I don't know if it's true or not, I'm not a vet, but I always talk about the goldfish and the shark. If you put a goldfish in an aquarium, it will not outgrow its environment. You throw the damn thing in a pond, it becomes a koi, So understand your environment. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? If you really believe that this pandemic is killing the whole world, you have to have evidence for it. If it's not, study the winners, study the people that recovered from it, or study the people that don't get it. I haven't stopped going out into the environment. I haven't stopped dealing with patients. I haven't stopped shopping. I haven't stopped working with people. And damn it, I had my blood work the other day and I still don't have the antibodies. I'm going to have to find somebody with it and lick their armpit or something because I'm trying to get this damn thing, But people say, well, Fred, how did you not get it? Well, my T cells probably kicked its ass when it got in my body, probably scared the shit out of it. I had a patient ask me the other day, aren't you scared of it? No, COVID's scared of me, And if we take that attitude that I'm not going to let an intruder come into my house, I'm going to do my best. Yeah, if, Mike Tyson comes in here, I'm getting my butt kicked. But I'm going to do my best to defend my family and my body as best I can. Why wouldn't you take that whole approach to life? Why wouldn't you want to be the best you could be the best accountant, be the best cook, be the best chiropractor, be the best teacher, be the best mom, be the best dad. And you take that approach to life, and something like this comes, it's not Ebola, it doesn't kill people 100%. It's like, it's a 99.9% survival rate. Well, I want to be in that 99%. What do I got to do? What do I have to do to be in that percentage? Because I don't want to be in this group. That's all the mass media talks about. I don't care about the losers. Who cares about the losers? I don't want to hear about Kansas City. Tell me what Tampa Bay did. Yeah. That's all I want to study. I guarantee this year, Dr. Mike, this year, everyone's studying Tampa Bay.
Sure. Anybody that wants to really learn how to win a Super Bowl is going to study everything Tom Brady ever said and did.
Yes.
That the healthy body he creates, like you talking about him texting all the players, motivational comments and instructions. And like you saying that you want to get this virus, some people would say, geez, that's foolish. But here's what no one can answer this properly for me, because I say to you, okay, if no one gets, if a great percentage of these people avoid this virus by hiding out, and they get a vaccine and it lasts however long, okay? Are you then saying, and is this what people are okay with? We're going to be vaccinating ourselves twice a year, let's say, for the rest of existence against all the other stuff that's related to this? Or are you going to build an antibody that can cross-react to this virus and then build the proper antibody while that one's entertaining it? I would love someone to answer this question for me, like somebody who's terrified or somebody in virology. This is a question I would ask Fauci. I'd say, so what you're saying is you don't want people to get this virus that are strong. Hide the weak. I agree. Quarantine the weak. We know the stats. Take those people and hide them. But where is the scenario where we build an antibody to this and it works for the next virus, SARS-CoV-3, that's coming in a year or 3 years or 10 years or 100 years? I don't know. How are we going to proceed? Are we going to be medically dependent on vaccinations for the rest of time? Wouldn't Big Pharma love that? I'm sure they would. But how healthy is that over time? We don't know the answer to that, but I'm sure it's not super healthy. That isn't going to make you great. It's either going to keep you alive and be somewhat sick, or maybe it's a neutral. Wouldn't that be nice? I don't pretend to know the answer to that, right? So for me, it's going to be, how do we build antibodies? How do we keep a strong immune system and deal with it? Someone answer that for me, please.
Well, again, the main thing is, yeah, not everyone has access or can read medical literature. I had someone argue with me, a good friend, Fred, not everyone can read will read medical literature. Then don't be upset about this. If you're upset about this, take the time to learn. I guarantee they're watching hours of CNN or mass media. You spend that hours reading a book. So when someone talks about something, you're okay and you understand it. I just don't get why we would study the losers and we would focus on the losers instead of the winners. And again, the cool thing about social and cultural evolution is if someone's really sick, we can take care of them. It was 10,000 years ago, we'd leave them on the side of the road, right? Oh, well, that kid didn't make it. We'll have to have another one. You know what I mean? That's the way the animal kingdom works.
Yeah.
The cool thing about being humans now in society, we take care of our weak. Okay. Are we really? That if we want to take care of our weak, the best thing is to get the strong out there to beat up on this virus, study the winners, so it's not that bad of a virus. They've totally turned around cultural evolution. So now people are not thinking for themselves. They're not studying biology, and the rules of biology have been thrown on its head. They've thrown out everything. Oh, don't use that term herd immunity. Excuse me? Are you kidding? Do you watch mammals at all? Did you ever watch, Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom? Do you watch The Crocodile Hunter? Have you seen how the world works? We're mammals. Yes, there's a herd immunity. They don't vaccinate the crocodiles. How do the crocodiles survive? Survival of the strongest, survival of the fittest. Well, then let's study the fittest humans to find out what traits they have and what we can manipulate and change in ourselves to match those traits.
Yeah, and the closest thing they're doing to that is, convalescent plasma, getting, people's antibodies out of them and that have done well with this to the sick. And God bless it. That's a fantastic idea. But take that a step further and look at the biochemistry, the physiology, the anatomy, and then maybe even if a drug has to be made to mimic that, or boy, this person eats incredible amounts of cruciferous vegetables. Oh boy, everybody eating cruciferous vegetables survived the virus with less trauma. That would be great. But why don't we start? Maybe we're doing that, and the study's not out yet. But I would love to see a dietary or a behavioral, whether it be a mental, a physical, or a biochemical trait that survive. We know a lot of them. I mean, I could guess that if you're eating McDonald's versus vegetables, you're going to have a harder time. I mean, that's not brain surgery or genius to figure that out. But let's back it up and see how much and which ones, and do a little more research on that. Maybe that's coming. That would be nice.
Fantastic.
All right, sir. Well, this has been great as always. Always a pleasure. So, if you like these podcasts, everybody, give them a thumbs up, subscribe to my podcast, my channels. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music. You can find us on on YouTube. And Dr. Fred Clary, he has an amazing podcast. He has power lifters and neurologists and wild, crazy people on his podcast. Those are awesome. You know, I know everybody likes Fred. They've told me many stories or many comments on you that my patients that have watched you are like, holy cow. I'm like, yeah, exactly. It's kind of why we say it. I told you. I told you. You know?
Can you imagine studying for a quiz with this guy?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I survived those. I survived those quizzes. Always got an A when I studied with you because, you know, we weren't going home till it was right.
That's right.
Which was awesome. I had to sleep for about a week after that, but, you know, it was good. Anyway, so thanks again, Dr. Fred Clary, for taking us on this tour of COVID, of stress, the immune system, emotions, everything today. Fantastic. And, you know, we'll talk soon. We'll get another one. He's going, maybe we'll do the female mind.
Oh, we have to.
Great.
We have to. We have to. Just for the comedy of it.
Absolutely.
That's all right, and man. I'm not being disparaging. It's because me and Dr. Mike have many females in our house.
Exactly. Well, that's why we want to see if we actually learn something. Maybe we learn something. You know, more than the guy who's got 4 boys and he goes to Boy Scouts every day. I'm telling you. If he only has if he has just one female in the house, we have many versions. So I'm telling you, we've learned some things the hard way, the easy way, through science, literature, prayer, meditation, standing on my head.
Hiding in the corner.
Yeah, exactly. Shaming, camouflaging myself with the furniture, staying out of harm's way. Anyway, all right, sir. You have a great day. We'll talk soon.
All right. Have a good one. Thank you. Bye-bye.